You noticed it earlier, and it wasn't by chance. You felt what no one else wanted to admit, that rigidity, the coldness disguised as haste, the irritation that came out of nowhere, and the silences that lasted longer than they should have. You spoke up, tried to show them, not out of pride, nor out of superiority, but out of love, because you still wanted to stay. And this person claimed the problem was you, that everything was an exaggeration, that you were overthinking, feeling too much, complicating everything, but it wasn't made up. You recognized what was there, even when no one else wanted to see it, even when this person turned away to avoid dealing with it. You tried, explained, changed your way of speaking, controlled your tone, swallowed things that were already stuck in your throat, and nothing worked. This person wanted to keep pretending, to remain blind, and you didn't. Then came the distance, the cut, the silence, the decision no one had the courage to make for you. You had to make it. And now that you're no longer there, now that the absence has become proof, this person feels it. They feel the weight of what they denied. They miss the presence that warned them. They long for the care that was called drama. They feel, but there's nowhere left to run. Because you don't come back just because now there's regret. You got tired of warning, of translating, of holding up a structure that only you saw crumbling. This person feels, but you are no longer trying to convince. You are no longer explaining the obvious. You are no longer putting out fires that weren't started by you. Now it's this person looking back and understanding too late. Were you once someone who warned and ended up becoming the only one this person would want to hear when everything fell apart? If this resonated with you, comment, "I needed to hear this." Have you ever been through something like this? Share your story in the comments. You saw what they didn't want to see. You felt what everyone else pretended didn't exist. It wasn't mystical intuition, nor a magical sixth sense. It was clarity. It was perception. It was the discomfort of someone living awake in a place where everyone else is making an effort to stay asleep. This person didn't listen, didn't hear, didn't want to see anything beyond their own comfort zone. You spoke. Yes, you spoke. You didn't shout. You didn't assert yourself with arrogance, but you spoke, because silence hurt more than any argument. You tried to show the signs. You tried to maintain the bond. You tried not to let slip away what could still be saved. But this person dismissed it, treated it as nonsense, changed the subject, said it was just a phase, attention, fatigue. You heard that and felt a knot tighten, because you knew the problem wasn't just the moment, it was the pattern. It was the repetition of disconnections that this person refused to see. It was the emotional distance spreading like rust, slow, invisible, but deadly. And you were there, seeing it all, feeling it all, swallowing what shouldn't have been yours, asking for help without asking, screaming inside while pretending everything was under control. This person thought it was an exaggeration, thought it was drama, thought you saw too much. But it wasn't excess, it was perception. You didn't create a storm, you were just able to feel the wind before the rain began. How many times did you try to talk? How many times did you choose the right moment, the right words, the calm tone? How many times did you wait for this person to be okay to say what was eating you inside? And still, nothing. Nothing but minimizations, nothing but defenses, nothing but a cold wall that said, with or without words, you're overreacting again. And there comes a time when it's exhausting. It's that simple. It's exhausting to try to save what is being sabotaged from within. It's exhausting to have to explain what should already be evident. It's exhausting to be the only one fighting, feeling, trying to fix what was broken by denial. And then you stop, not out of spite, not out of pride, but because you reach the limit of what you could still give. You stop talking, and this person doesn't even notice. You start to walk away slowly, and this person stays distracted. But one day, the absence weighs heavily, and then this person starts to notices that there's no longer that daily care, notices that the alerts have stopped, notices that your silence now hurts more than any difficult conversation. But now, it's too late. You are no longer there trying to prevent the collapse. You are no longer willing to be the spokesperson for what they don't want to hear. And everything this person ignored now comes back as a consequence. Everything you tried to prevent now explodes in the hands of someone who thought it was just in your head. This person feels the emptiness, feels the discomfort, feels the impact of what was denied for so long, and realizes too late that you weren't being dramatic. You were giving a warning, you were offering protection, you were trying for a real connection. Now that you're not there, this person tries to seek advice that you already provided, repeats phrases you once said, scours old messages trying to find some key to save them from their own blindness, but you don't return just because you are now understood. Understanding without action isn't enough. Regret after destruction doesn't rebuild what was neglected. You know this. That's why you move forward. With pain perhaps, but with dignity. This person feels, but you've already understood that it's not your role to save someone who insists on self-sabotage. You don't need to go back. You don't need to prove anything more. You don't need to be recognized by someone who didn't know how to listen when it was still time. You were once that person, weren't you? The one who warned, who begged for change, and who today is remembered as the only one who saw everything from the very beginning. You weren't being dramatic. You were visionary. You were connection amidst the chaos. But now it's this person who screams into the void, who feels your absence like a sentence, who sees the damage, but too late. If this resonated with you, comment, "I needed to hear this." Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments. Comment a heart if you're on this journey together. You noticed it first, and that's why it hurts so much. Because nobody wants to be the one who sees it first, because whoever sees carries the burden of speaking up and the exhaustion of not being heard. But now that you've stopped, that person has started to feel. They've begun to realize the damage you tried to prevent. They've started to see that they lost the only presence they still wanted to mend. They've come to understand that you were never being dramatic. You were being courageous, and the silence that remains, that now belongs to them, not you. And even if they try to salvage what has slipped away, you are no longer the same person who waited for a response. Because there's a turning point inside you, an invisible, almost imperceptible moment where something gives way. Not in the other person, in you. It's when the heart stops making excuses, when the soul decides it's no longer worth diminishing itself to fit. When the body starts to refuse the invitations it previously accepted out of need. That point, no one sees, but you remember exactly when you reached it. It was on an ordinary afternoon, in a small gesture, in a cold response that shouldn't hurt anymore. But on that day didn't sting, it just exhausted you. And in that exhaustion something changed. You stopped trying to understand what that person felt. You stopped searching for excuses in the past. You stopped waiting for them to come and seek you out with the eyes of someone who finally sees. You realized, yes, you realized that love has its limits too, that empathy doesn't need to turn into self-neglect. That continuing to try can, in some cases, just be a beautiful way to remain trapped. You recognize this through pain, but you recognized it, and in that moment, everything started to become healing. Not that magical, immediate healing, but the healing that comes from someone who stops self-harming to maintain one-sided connections. The healing that is born in the silence of your decision. That person today lives the absence as a punishment, but you've understood that you're not punishing anyone. You're just freeing yourself, freeing your sensitivity, your ability to listen, your capacity to see where no one else could. You weren't too intense. You were the only person still trying to save something alive in that empty space. And now that person walks among the rubble you tried to avoid. They repeat phrases they once mocked. They value gestures they previously called needy. And they look back, wanting to find you. But you didn't stay in the past, you moved on. And as much as there's still nostalgia, memory, affection, you don't want to go back to a place where you had to prove you deserve to be heard. Now it's this person who rummages through their own memory, who feels the emptiness in the corners where you once filled, who discovers that your presence was more than company, it was a compass. But you got tired of being a map for someone who didn't want to take any path. If this still resonates within you, comment, "This is me, finally free." Have you felt that silent turning point? Share with me in the comments. And you know what's even stronger? You hold no grudges, you just no longer carry the burden. Because true forgiveness is not wishing for revenge, and also not wishing for a return. It's being at peace with what was lost, and whole with what you chose to keep. You. Because no matter how far you've gone, the guilt still tried to come back. It tried to make you think if maybe you demanded too much, if you spoke at the wrong time, if you expected the impossible from someone who never even had themselves. And in those quiet moments, when everything seems calmer, that's when the guilt whispers. It doesn't shout, it insinuates. It comes with soft and distorted memories, with reminders that erase the pains but leave the affections intact, and suddenly you find yourself doubting again. But breathe. You didn't go too far. You went as far as you could. You didn't ask for too much. You just wanted presence, affection, listening. You didn't destroy anything. You just stopped supporting something that was already crumbling inside. And this feeling that returns now is not guilt, it's grief. Grief for what could have been. Grief for everything you tried to build. And that died while you still believed. Don't condemn yourself for that. Crying after liberation is not a relapse. It's part of the cleansing. It's as if the body says, now that we are safe, I can let go of everything I needed to hold back. So yes, you will remember, you will feel. You will have days when everything seems to come back, but you are not going back. You are just emptying what's left. Because when you decide to go, you don't take the pain, but you also don't leave everything behind all at once. The pain will accompany you for a while. It walks beside you silently, until it realizes it no longer needs to stay. And on that day, you feel something you maybe haven't felt until now. Peace. Not euphoria, not performative freedom, not that forced joy to say you overcame, but peace. That sense that even with pain, it was right. Even with love, it was necessary. Even with longing, it was maturity. You don't go back, not because you've closed yourself off, but because you've opened up to yourself. And the most beautiful part is that now time, without needing to shout, prove, or explain, you begin to be truly seen by those who matter, by those who feel, by those who don't need you to unfold into 1,000 to be understood. You will notice this gradually, in a light conversation, in a listening gaze, in a hug that doesn't require effort. And in this new place, you no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. It's already noticeable. It's already felt. It's already within you. If this resonated with you, right here, now, I understand. Have you ever carried this guilt after leaving? Tell me in the comments. Leave a heart if you're still clearing this pain without hurry. You still feel, but you no longer get confused, because now you realize that feeling is not the same as wanting it back. Remembering is not the same as wishing for a return. Loving us can also mean moving on without. This clarity doesn't come overnight. It comes gradually, like someone cleaning a very foggy window. At first, everything seems murky. You doubt yourself, your choices, your memory. But over time, with the right silence, with the right presence, the image begins to reveal itself. What once seemed like guilt turns into compassion for who you were. What once felt like weakness transforms into strength disguised as tenderness. What once made you want to go back now makes you grateful for having moved forward. You realize this when you no longer want explanations, when you stop building internal defenses to justify your departure, when you no longer feel anger, just a nostalgia that doesn't hurt, that doesn't plead, that simply observes and lets go. And this is a milestone. It's the moment when your self-love stops being a theory and starts to feel like home. A home where you fit completely, where you no longer need to diminish yourself to fill someone else's void, where your pain doesn't need to be validated to exist, and where your perspective is no longer accused of being exaggerated. Now everything that crosses your mind has space. You listen to yourself. You embrace yourself, you acknowledge yourself, before trying to be acknowledged by others. And in this new vibration, you begin to attract different relationships. Relationships where you're not the only one noticing what's out of place, where you don't have to beg for someone to listen, where your pauses are respected, and your silence is understood. Because those who have also felt this pain don't ignore those who still feel it, and those who had to leave to survive don't demand that you come back to prove yourself. You realize this when someone looks at you and says, I hear you, without needing you to say a word. If this still resonates within you, comment, that's me, finally seen. Have you ever experienced this kind of reconnection with yourself? Share in the comments. Comment a heart if you are still rebuilding your inner home at your own pace. If this message touched you in some way, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear this today. Comment down below which part resonated with you the most. And if you feel that this is the kind of content that understands you without judging, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and give it a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference for this conversation to keep reaching those who need it. This journey isn't over yet, And in the next video, we're going even deeper. You've forgiven, but realized you don't want to go back. I'll see you there.